Hello, Ochole Okutepa is my name, and I'm excited to welcome you to another episode of the show where I have Bible answers to every relationship question. Today's question is very, very serious. It agitates the minds of single people. It also agitates the mind of married people. Single people because they want to make sure they go into marriage having it right and not being bothered about something that is central to marriage. Married people because some people already have difficult experiences, finding their way around issues that has to do with sex. So I'm going to address this conversation in a way that allays the fear, gives direction, and helps couples and even couples to be find balance to the subject of sex and sexuality when it comes to the issue of size and when it comes to some associated issues. But before I get into the answer that I have for you today, may I say this very quickly. If you have not subscribed to this channel, you're missing. There are loads of videos on different areas: relationship, dating, courtship, marriage, finance, romance, and all of that. You may want to just subscribe to this channel and also share so that other people can come in and receive what the Lord has given us to give. All right, so back to our question. What is the question precisely? Does size matter? Now, this question always comes in when it has to do with the woman being concerned about the size of the male sex organ. All right, and because our culture today predominantly also elevates sex to a place where if we're not careful, we would actually miss the essence of sex. Let me quickly also even say this, that God did not have to take Adam and Eve through a seminar or any special course to make them prepared for sex. God simply said it wasn't good for man to be alone. I'll make for him a helper. That is Genesis chapter 2. And in that conversation, God dealt with the holistic need of the man. The first part of his need that God highlighted was that it was not good for him to be alone. In that package was companionship. In that package was sexual fulfillment. In that package was everything that had to do with his soulish satisfaction, his fleshly satisfaction, to put him at ease as far as his existence within the realm of the physical, emotional space is concerned. Then it says further that I'll make for him a helper. In essence, for what I have called him to be and all I have made him to be, he would have somebody who collaborates with him to fulfill his destiny. So the first thing I would say is that sex itself is not all that there is to the marriage. So it's so important to get it right so that we can take away the distraction that that issue can be. Now, when we begin to get into the conversation about size, let me say this, and common research will deliver this result to you. That when we begin to bother about the size of the male sex organ, that an average man is about the same size. I mean, that shocks a lot of people. When I did a little research into the area, one of the things I got to realize was that some people ask this question because of the stature, of their husband or the person they are considering to be married to. Perhaps it's not as tall as other people, or perhaps it's slimmer than other people. So it leads to the question as to what his capacity will be, beginning from the question of size. The first thing I must say here, and say it very clearly, is that common research will show you that men average about the same size when erect. I mean, if you interact with the male sexual dynamic, it's so funny because when a man is not erected, sometimes you may become scared. Like, what's going on here? Nothing is going on. The equipment is simply resting, absolutely in a state of rest. Now, the problem is we take attention from certain things that matter and put attention on the things that do not exactly, matter. That's where the agitation comes from. And I'm even speaking to married people who may not know some of the things I'm about to say, who think that their lack of sexual satisfaction has something to do, with just the size of the penis of their husband. No, let's put perspective to this. Now, let me quickly say this, that the most important issue when it comes to sexual satisfaction is not the size of the organ, but the use of the organ. All right, very important. And let me quickly clear the air on something. This does not mean if you are single, you should go get experience. And I'm going to tell you exactly why that experience is dangerous. I'm doing an entire video on it, but I'll just highlight it. Alright, that experience is dangerous because no two persons are the same, and no two persons have the same sexual expectation. So if you gain experience from another person or multiple people, you are not gaining experience for your partner. In fact, that's not experience, that's some level of damage. Because the way God designed sex is for your partner's body to teach and set your taste in sex. All right, that's why the gospel about virginity and sexual purity is critical, so that even people who have had sex, need to purge their minds, all right, of the corruption that went in or goes in when people sexually misbehave. All right, so that's that about that. I won't go too far into that. Let's come back to the issue of use. So, when you even speak to ladies or you conduct basic research, you realize that not everybody is even expecting a big size. Some people even are scared when it comes to the issue of size. So some people are not even comfortable. All right, so here's the deal, whether big or whether average or whether small, because the exception to general rule, I say an averagely erected man, scientifically proven, is about the same size. But just like all fingers are not equal in life, of course there will be differences. Now, God does not intend the difference to cause any kind of trouble. All right, so how do you come around the issue of the use of the sex organ? The first thing that every couple must do is to accept their bodies. Now, that's a big problem for a lot of marriages today. Their bodies are not accepted. Body shaming is not just when you insult your partner to the face, calling out their body parts. Body shaming is also when you decide or when you respond to your partner with disappointment because of their body. Now, you have a lot of couples who are having bad sexual experience because they technically or unknowing to them body shamed their partner. Sexual performance has a lot to do with confidence, self-confidence. All right, very critical. So if you take confidence away from your partner, you have denied them the capacity to be functionally good. All right, because if they approach you in bed with doubt, if they approach you in bed with the uncertainty of whether, number one, you accept them, number two, whether you'll be satisfied by them, you have already crushed a very important element of sexual satisfaction. So it becomes very important. Now, the covenant of marriage is a very powerful covenant, very powerful covenant. It's important at that time, all right, to come to terms. Now, this is what I say to single people, because the question also comes, which I'm addressing in another video: if we don't have sex, how do we know? All right, how do we know these things? Then the question I ask, all right, in return is, so if you are done testing 100% or 200% or 50% or 7 persons and you're not satisfied with them, whose spouses would you have been playing with, or what experience are you gaining? Is life so about sex? All right, so in that video, I'll deal with all the parameters of what to look out for, without having sex, to know that you have sexual capacity. But let's go on with this. So one of the things you must do, like I said, is to accept each other's bodies. This is a major issue of sexuality in most marriages today. And this goes beyond the issue of even the sex organ. This sometimes goes into how people begin to react to each other after some time in marriage. So a lot of spouses do not feel desired. All right, and for some, unfortunately, their spouses have gone as far as, throwing the issue of their lack of satisfaction back at them like it's their fault. Let me quickly make this principle very clear. Sexual satisfaction is the function of two cooperating persons in bed. Sexual satisfaction is the function of two cooperating persons in bed. So if the spouses aren't cooperating and one is judgmental, sexual satisfaction cannot be delivered. Number one, you cannot enjoy the best of sex when you are judgmental. All right. Number two, you take away the confidence of your partner. And this is why you see couples who go a couple of years sometimes or months, they're coming for counseling all the time, who have not had sexual relations. Gradually, it went down to no sex, all right, because confidence is lost and judgment is on the table. So sexual unity is a more powerful tool, all right, than the size of the organ. So that's the first thing you want to get right. You want to make sure there's no body shaming. You want to make sure there's an acceptance of what you got. Because it's the acceptance of what you got, all right, that will determine, all right, how you go forward. Let me quickly add another point on the issue of accepting who you are and not body shaming yourselves. Even where there is proven medical condition, let me quickly say this. The Bible says in Matthew 18 that if any two of you shall agree as touching anything, it shall be done by my Father who is in heaven. Even where we have sexual issues to deal with as a couple, the greatest response we can give is a unified response. Sadly, this is where a lot of couples come into judgment for one another and take away the capacity to find the miracle that they need. All right, to find the miracle that they need. If any two of you shall agree as touching anything. Anything in my village means anything, and I know that anything in your village also means anything. So you have couples who have lost their unity because they became judgmental or body shame, as it were. So miracles happen of diverse kinds, because some people have had to deal with sexual dysfunction. Some didn't even have it all along their life. Some had it all along in their life. Of course, it's another ball game whether they disclose at the right time or not. That's an issue to address, which I will address or in another video. But here's the deal, right? In that marriage, all right, the covenant of marriage is so powerful that if we join hands together in agreement, all right, there are two dimensions of this agreement. Dimension number one of this agreement is the dimension of prayer. The dimension of this agreement number one is the dimension of prayer, where we come together in faith, like I said, if any two of you shall agree as touching anything. The dimension number two is the cooperation, where your partner sees that even if they are the ones with the issue, or you both have an issue, that you are unified. All right, you take away judgment and you release grace to them. If our doctors will tell you when you are facing any sexual issues, all right, that the unity of the couple goes a long way in helping one or both of them, if one is the one with the issue or both of them with the issue, deal with it and rise above it. I mean, speak to doctors and you will hear this all the time, that the moment there is that mutual support is an infrastructure for doing well. All right, so that cooperation is necessary, so that if you need to seek any treatment, as how you express your faith, or what aids your faith, you seek it together, you take it as your thing. Like I always say, in marriage, none of you is as important as both of you. So it's very key to come to the point where you understand that cooperation will do you good at that time. So broadly speaking, on this very first point, I'm saying that, the unity of the spouse will deliver the result, all right? Now, another thing that unity does is it helps you to have conversation, which is what is missing in a lot of homes. All right, people are not, people do not converse when it comes to the subject of sex, and that's a major problem. People do not have clear conversations. See, you are incapable of satisfying a person with whom you do not speak about sex. It's impossible. Now, because something very dynamic happens in the process of sex and the conversations that follow. It's when you have conversations that you will see things you can do better. Is when you have conversations that you see things that you do that don't matter. Is when you have conversations that you see, areas of their suggestion. Don't forget, this is their body. Don't forget, this is your partner that takes, the pleasure of what you do, because you are really not in bed for yourself. All right, it's your partner that takes the pleasure of what you do. All right, so, and let me quickly also say this, that in the process of sex, you would have realized that you did things that they liked, you did things they didn't like with the same organ. So the organ is not the problem. It is the, is the conversation, is the capacity to get into their mind. So the most important thing at that time is your capacity to understand what they want. All right, it's your capacity to understand what makes them happier in bed. It's your capacity to understand what satisfies them better. All right, and that is tied to the conversations you are able to have. And that's why if you're a couple and you're not having conversation regarding your sexuality, the bed is going to get colder. I'm telling you for sure, the bed is going to get colder. So one of the things you want to establish in your home is to establish the free flow of conversation, non-judgmental conversation, constructive conversation on the subject, to have the capacity, all right, to discuss your sexuality, to discuss your preferences, to discuss, what satisfied you, what does not really count, all right, or to point them towards, the areas of your body, all right, that makes the experience worth it. So you need to keep the conversations open. And in fact, sometimes you may want to constructively schedule this conversation. You may want to have this conversation periodically. That's fine. See, sometimes routine in marriage is one of the things that help. Routine is one of the things that help. All right, very, very critical point, routine. So it's okay to choose to have this conversation, say perhaps once a month. Very, very okay. Because sometimes people project like if you have any constructive, scheduling in marriage, it makes it monotonous. That's not true. You eat every day except you're fasting. You schedule eating. That's why you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All right. It's so key to come to the point where you realize that certain scheduling do not necessarily spell doom, all right, for the fun and for the romance of the home. I'm going to make one more point on this video, and that is you must come to the point where you understand that style, all right, style is key. Style is more important than size. I'm saying this again, style. This is going to flow from conversation, of course, or observation. Two key things where you begin to appreciate the style that works better. Unfortunately, we live in a generation where people just pick sexual preferences based on what they see on porn, sites or magazines. By the way, subject for another day, porn is a no in any marriage. Absolute no. All right. So you see people approaching their partner with mentalities, all right, number one, that are alien to their marriage. Number two, demonized mentalities. Let me just go ahead of myself in what I should say in that video regarding porn, to say this very clearly. All right. The porn process is a very demonized process that gives you fantasies that your partner cannot. Put that word in block letters. Your partner cannot, will not, and will never be able to satisfy. All right, so, a lot of time people don't appreciate the style that works in their home. Now, let me quickly say this also, that the style that works in your home is a function of various factors. Various factors. Number one, personal preference. You see, this is where conversation and observation comes in again. Personal preference. All right, the style that will work in your home has something to do with personal preference. All right, number two, the style that will work in your home will have something to do with your body type. All right, with your body type. You can't just jack up your wife and say, I want to have you in the air if she's a certain size. And the fact that she's a certain size does not mean automatically that you cannot have fun in bed. Now, that's where magazines and Hollywood, Nollywood, and all of the woods in the world who project things to us through entertainment do not help us. Because part of what they do is that they bring you to the point where they narrow sexual preferences to certain limitations. They just make it look like, oh, this is sexy, this is the most sexy man in the world. That's trash. That's total rubbish. There's nothing like that. There's no more sexy man, more sexy woman. No, forget beauty pageants. That's just business. All right, that's entertainment business. It doesn't count when we come to conversations like this. So it's so important at this point, all right, to look at, like I said, their sexual preference. Number two, I say look at their body type. All right, these things define. Number three, look at your sexual space. I tell people, look at your bedroom. All right, what do you have in the bedroom? You have a bed. Do you have chairs? Do you have any table in your bedroom? Do you have a spacious closet or bathroom? All right, so you want to map out your space and see what you can do with the space, having regard for your sexual preference, having regard for your body type. All right, then you are dealing now with your space. It's like construction. You map out the space and you know what to do with the space. All right, then number 4, execution. Now, look at any project. I'm not a science person or an engineer, but why do you think they have gadgets on every site that tries to see if they are building according to pattern? All right, so when you begin to execute, you look at, the different parameters you have set. How much progress are we making? And by the way, I'm not speaking to young couples, I'm speaking to all couples. All right, you would do this for the rest of your life. Because, so many things will affect sex all your life. All right, diminishing strength, increasing strength, menopause, and whatever. All right, so you will always have to go through this routine if you are going to keep the bed warm. Very, very important. So if you consider these 4 factors I just mentioned under this point: style, all right, you consider body type, preference, body type, you consider your space, like I said, and you look at the execution, because there are certain things you think you want, execution will be impossible. There are certain things you want that you realize, execution is possible. It's different kind of things that you would have to deal with in the process. So the size is not as important as the other factors I just mentioned, from unity to conversation to observation to style, and all the sub points I made under all of these points. You need to come to terms with this. All right, I have something here for you, and I think that you need this. Mutual Coming, a no-holds-barred guide to maximizing foreplay, achieving mutual orgasm, and sexual satisfaction in marriage. Is my book available on Okada Books and Amazon. This book would actually simplify the sexual process and make you enjoy sex in your marriage at another level. All right, so you can get this book on Amazon. I got this myself, paperback from Amazon. So you want to look at this Mutual Coming or Chile Kutepa. This would be an absolute help and guide to you. I'm so excited I was able to, make this conversation today and address this very critical subject. Again, like I said at the beginning, you want to hit the subscribe button if you've not already subscribed. Hit the notification bell if you've not, so that you can see our videos once they drop. And I plead with you, send this video or the link to this channel to your friends and family. There's loads of content here that will bless them. All right, before I go also, we are glad to receive your support for this ministry. All right, whether your question or support, there's an email address right on your screen. We'll be glad to hear from you. Whether you want to support or you have further questions for us, I'll be glad to guide you. So, until I come your way in another episode, God bless you. Ochole Kutepa is my name.